Hello everyone, my name is Hydramazing and welcome back to another Monster Hunter Wilds video. And I'm sure you can tell by the title, in today's video we're going to be talking about Title Update 3 and more specifically Omega and how amazing of a fight this is. A few caveats to get out of the way first. I will not be showing the final phase of the fight here in case you were worried about getting spoiled of that, and I will also only really be talking about Omega. I'll talk about the Dark Knight and the Pictomancer and all the other rewards in a separate video. So how is the Omega fight? Well, I have to say it's tough and fun and hard and awesome and cool, right? That's how I think about it at initial playthrough. Omega is probably the most fun I've had playing Monster Hunter Wilds, and that's coming from someone who already loves the game. I think it's important to recognize here that I was playing these initial hunts with my friends, and I do imagine that playing with randoms will be a lot more difficult than playing with people that you can communicate with and that you know, because there are very specific roles here that you need to fill, and if somebody's not doing their job, things will fall apart very quickly. And this is actually a good segue into talking about what those specific roles are. As you can see by the video, I was playing Lance because I was the tank for my team, and I think, unbiased opinion here, that the tank is the most important part of every run. The other two roles that Capcom recommends that you have in your team are a support and a DPS, but as you can see here, none of us were playing support, we all just kind of had life powder just to help each other out, but the other two people I was playing with were playing DPS, and I think that setup also worked pretty well. As for Omega, it has a ton of different moves at its disposal. It will fire rockets at you, it will fire lasers, it will shoot giant homing fists that you can knock away with your slinger or hitting them with an attack, it will jump on you, it will stomp on you, it will fly around and spawn other enemies like Malboros or little spider bots. In particular, Omega actually has a move that's very similar to Behemoth's Charybdis attack from Monster Hunter World, where it will mark one of your hunters and will shoot a bomb at them a couple of seconds later that will ignite the ground and leave it on fire for a very long time. So it comes down to that hunter to have to run to the edge of the map to try and make sure that that fire does not interfere with your fight. So how exactly do you go about fighting Omega? And this goes back to why I said that the tank is probably the most important role, because when the fight starts, Omega will have a lot of its moves at its disposal, but it will be very limited in how it uses them. And during that time, you as the tank need to get its attention by hitting it in the head to gather enmity. If you don't know what enmity is, just think of it as aggro. It means that the boss is targeting you in particular. So you want the tank to have Omega's enmity because they are the ones who will be able to survive its fury. And it's very important to make sure that you get its enmity before Omega powers up, because once that happens, it will start firing lasers, bombs, rockets, and rocket-powered fists in every single direction, making it very difficult to deal damage. But if you do manage to gather its enmity before it powers up, it means that you are now going to be the sole target of all of that barrage. So that leaves the legs open to be attacked by the rest of your team so that they can actually deal damage, because the legs on Omega are its weak points. If you are playing DPS in this situation, your job is to wound Omega's legs, because when it's in that empowered state, the only way that you can break it out is by breaking those legs, and that requires you proccing wounds on them over and over again. So while the tank is tanking literally everything and taking the full barrage, the DPS should be focusing on one leg in particular in order to wound it and then rinse and repeat over and over again. And this is why I wanted to stress the fact that I was playing in a group of people that I could actually talk to, because if you were playing this fight with randoms, a lot of people won't know what they're doing, they'll attack the wrong spots, they'll be all over the place, and it will probably be a lot harder to actually accomplish your goal than if you're playing with people who know what they are doing. So with all of that info out of the way, what is it exactly that I like about the Omega fight so much? First off, there's the aspect of preparation. This is the first hunt in Monster Hunter Wilds where I've actually had to change my build specifically to fit the monster that I was fighting. In the New Age Monster Hunter games like Monster Hunter World, Rise, and Wilds, it's more important to make a generalized build than to make a specialized one. People will usually find what works for the most part and stick with that instead of making a build for each individual monster. But I really like the aspect of preparation that was in old world Monster Hunter games, where making a build for a monster was very commonplace. On our first try against Omega, we actually got completely destroyed because I didn't have guard up on my lance because I was built way more offensively. And for the first time ever, I actually needed to fully change up my build to be strictly based on defense because you cannot guard the lasers if you do not have guard up, and Omega spams a lot of lasers. That actually leads into the second thing I like a lot about the Omega fight, which is that it doesn't incentivize you to always prioritize damage. Like, I had to remove some of my offensive decorations to load up on skills like Guard, Guard Up, and Divine Blessing in order to be able to survive Omega's onslaught. Additionally, my friend Lumi over there with the Switch Axe actually slotted in Flare and sacrificed a lot of his other offensive skills to do so. For those of you who don't know, Flare is a skill that allows you to wound enemies more easily, and this is pretty much useless for the rest of the cast because wounds aren't that important and you are already able to wound most monsters easily enough. But with Omega, wounding is so crucial to the flow of this fight that it was worth that trade-off of losing some offensive skills if it means being able to knock Omega out of its enraged state much more quickly. And of course, this leads into the third thing I love so much about the Omega fight, which is how much it leans into the new mechanics introduced in Monster Hunter Wilds. Using focus mode to attack the same place over and over again to actually proc those wounds is very important, as I mentioned earlier, but also using focus mode defensively to make sure you're guarding in the right spots so that you don't get absolutely walloped by the barrage that Omega is throwing at you. The Omega Planetess hunt is also the only hunt in the entire game that actually makes use of the weapon swap mechanic from Monster Hunter Wilds. Most people write this mechanic off as a gimmick, and for the most part it kind of is in the game, except for in this fight, because in Phase 3 of the Omega Planetess fight, it spawns in a mechanized Nursilla that you need to take down in order to survive the one-shot attack that it will throw at you. Unfortunately, the Nursilla has a different set of weaknesses from Omega Planetess itself, so you need to have one weapon that's geared towards Omega and another weapon that's geared towards Nursilla, swapping them out immediately in order to deal with that DPS phase. And then on top of all of this, the game also rewards you for taking advantage of temporary weak spots on some of Omega's attacks. Right after firing some of its bigger laser moves, for approximately 1 second, there will be a weak spot on Omega's face, and if you are able to successfully capitalize on it and hit it with a focus attack, you are rewarded with a force field that spawns right in front of Omega. These force fields are a unique mechanic that is specific to the Omega Planetess fight. While standing inside of the force field, you are immune to all of Omega's ranged attacks, which is very strong because that includes the attack that lowers your maximum health. There are a few other ways to acquire these force fields throughout the fight, such as knocking certain materials off of Omega and also destroying very specific spider bots that try to swarm you. And I understand that this is a lot to take in all at once. You're certainly not going to remember all of this when you're in the heat of the moment, but after a bunch of hunts and after you start to familiarize yourself with the boss movesets, you'll start to see that it is so much fun to actually use all these mechanics at the same time and work in a group of people to accomplish the goal of slaying Omega. It's just feeling like a well-oiled machine as you hunt down this insurmountable threat that just gives me that feeling of joy that's hard to describe. And I think something that's also very important to keep in mind here is that this is the basic version of Omega, 8-star 3 difficulty, right? There is still the Savage version of Omega, which is a 9-star tempered version that is so much harder. It's certainly one of the hardest fights ever in Monster Hunter. But don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to familiarize yourself with the basic version because you need quite a few gems to actually craft all of this stuff, and they have very low drop rates, which is, Monster Hunter. Oh, I also just remembered that on this phase of the fight, make sure to actually use the ice shards hanging from the ceiling because they're just free damage against Omega. They stun him, they do a ton of damage. Make sure to be using all of them because I've seen a lot of hunters not take use of them and then we're missing out just on, free damage for the hunt. And if I had to give any other tips and tricks for this fight, I would say, one, most important thing, gather enmity, right? Without having someone as the tank who is holding aggro, Omega will spam rockets on all of you and it will feel impossible. And two, take your time, right? There is no rush for this hunt. It's not like Fatalis where you only have half an hour or some other hunts where you only have 20 minutes. For the basic version of Omega, you still have 50 minutes and you can make full use of that. The only time when you actually need to be rushing is when it spawns in the Nursilla, because that is an actual damage check. But aside from that, take your time, dodge around, make sure to sheath your weapon to dodge the rockets and not get hit by the fists, and then that way you can actually look for an opening to take it down. Oh, and also bring some life powder and dust of life, because when Omega is focusing down the tank, there is almost no room to actually heal themselves, so healing them from the sidelines is also very helpful. So spoiler alert for this run of the hunt, but we actually don't slay Omega in this video. But the reason why I decided to use this footage anyways, because I think it exemplifies all of the key mechanics that you will need to take Omega down. Whether that's inflicting wounds or gathering enmity and tanking properly, or in my case, semi-properly. I hope you got something away from this footage, because I certainly got something away from, playing it. So we're coming up on the DPS check here, and there's a few important things to keep in mind once Omega spawns in the Nursilla. This Nursilla is not normal, it fights like the one that you fought before the Omega quest, meaning it has a lot of lasers and explosions. But on top of spawning the Nursilla, Omega actually spawns in other smaller spider bots that explode on contact, as well as Malboros. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Final Fantasy, Malboros inflict every single status effect on you in that game, and it's the exact same in Monster Hunter Wilds. If you step into their poison cloud, you will get hit with a flurry of different status effects, and that will make it a lot harder to actually take down Nursilla. But it's not all bad actually, because Nursilla herself is also affected by these Malboro poison clouds. So if you can lure her successfully into one of the clouds, she will become paralyzed and you will have a free opportunity to just wail on her and deal a ton of damage. Another important thing to note is that once Nursilla is actually spawned, you have about 2 minutes until Omega unleashes a one-shot attack that completely wipes your squad. And as I said earlier, we didn't actually succeed in this run, and this is where we failed, because we had no clue about weapon swapping to fire weapons in order to deal more damage to Nursilla, and we just couldn't pass the damage check and we get one-shotted. So if you want to know what that looks like, keep watching because it's going to show up. But setting that aside, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I very much enjoy this fight. I think that Omega is some of the best Monster Hunter that Monster Hunter Wilds has to offer, and I really hope Capcom keeps going in this direction with the new monsters. I know Gogmazios is coming out in December, and I cannot wait to see what they do with that hunt if this one is already so amazing. Also, if you're on PC, let me know if they've actually implemented any fixes to improve performance on your device, because I only play on console, so I actually have no clue what the performance is like over there. And I know they said they're going to be doing more stuff for Title Update 4, but I wonder if they've done anything for Title Update 3. And with all of that out of the way, thank you for watching and happy hunting.